Hey, my name is Dev. I've been a serious guitarist for over 3.5 decades. I want to help you improve on this instrument. And yeah, 35 years before this video was being made was the early 90s. And that means that in my formative years, I got to experience the shift from the 80s shredder folks to the 90s alternative revolution. And I got to learn Joe Satriani and Steve Vai stuff, and then immediately move over and learn some Soundgarden and Nirvana, while also getting Metallica and early Red Hot Chili Peppers in there. I'm super happy that I went through that specific experience and I got to live through the time when the guitar zeitgeist was switching. But I also think that there's some lessons that I learned there that I don't see discussed terribly often. So I picked 4 of them here. I'm going to put some timestamps up over here so you can jump to them if you'd like to. But also, I recommend just going along for the ride. I think this one's going to be pretty cool. Let's start with the basics. I got the classical out. Acoustic will work. This is When the Children Cry by White Lion. If you're just starting out, or you can play the cowboy chords but arpeggiating is kind of weird for you, it's a great one to start with because he never leaves first position in the song, except for this one run, which intrigued me when I was getting started. Now, I already knew the D major chord, most of you do. Most of you also know the sus2 where you pick up this finger, and the 4 where you use your pinky here. All over all kinds of music that came before it. But this, I was like, okay, the D string is kind of droning, and we're playing these notes. And what I eventually figured out is these are triads, groups of 3 notes, and these are all the inversions of our D major chord. And actually, in the recording, when this chord is played, overdubbed on top of it, is that harmonic. There's a natural harmonic on the 7th fret of the D, the G, and the B, and that is the same notes as this, but 12 frets higher. So I learned 4 ways to play the D chord just from that one little run once I kind of figured it out. Now, the concept of keeping the root note droning on a string and then playing the different inversions of the chord on top of it is something that you can translate to just about any other key if you've got a capo, but I can also do it, let's move it to A here. Instead of D, and do it in A. And you can use this That's something that I still use in my playing all the time to this day. And for me, it started with When the Children Cry by Vito Bratta. Excellent guitarist. Okay, so bear with me on this one, because it is by the amazing lead guitarist Reb Beach in the kind of mediocre band Winger in the very problematic song 17. And I get all of that. And for the record, I was way younger than 17 when I first heard this. But I'm just talking about the guitar playing, and specifically this one run. And when I first heard that, it opened up the door for how you could tap on the guitar. It wasn't 8-finger tapping, it wasn't 80's. Triads on a single string. Reb was playing through a scale and using tapping. I did an entire video on non-traditional tapping techniques. This was part of it. Here's an excerpt from that. I'm going to put a card up here and a link in the description if you want to check out the entire video. Let's take a look at this particular line. And what I'm doing there is really playing 3 notes per string descending. And if you want to take a look at that shape, I'll put a card up here and a link in the description. I'm specifically using the 3 notes per string descending shape for the Aeolian mode that I go over in that video. But I'm playing 3 notes per string and then back to the root, descending. And then the note above the highest note on each string that's within the key, I'm just tapping that as well. So let's take a look at this in small chunks. And we just continue that pattern, and you can keep moving down as many octaves as you want. If you're not comfortable with this yet, start with that chunk, and then you can move it down to the next B. And then you can keep moving it down. So again, what you're doing is playing 3 notes per string, and then you hammer on the note below the note below the one you're going to tap. Tap it, hammer, tap, legato, hammer, tap, legato, hammer, tap, legato, hammer, tap, legato, hammer, and then I do a little to get down to the root of this particular one. I'll do it a little bit slower. And then at speed. Pearl Jam's debut album 10 has this one incredible song. Well, it's got a bunch of great songs on it, but learning the intro to this one song, Garden, was really transformative for me in my formative years. A lot of formations going on there. But I started off by just playing an open D chord and kind of doing a pull off to the open high E, as happens in that Vito Bratta thing from White Lion. But I also realized if I played these 2 notes, just the G string and the high E, so ooh, that sounds like the beginning of the song. So let's see if I could figure it out. And I started figuring out the notes as far as I got, and I was like, it's like those are the right notes, but it doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. And this was one of the first times that I learned something in a completely different position, because eventually I learned that he plays it here. And first of all, what a cool riff. Great way to start an atmospheric song that builds to a sing-along chorus. But also, it's kind of the opposite of that When the Children Cry Vito Bratta thing, because instead of droning the low note, instead of droning the lowest note there, which is the root, here he's droning the higher notes, the open B and the high E. And using a lot of pull-offs and stuff and staying in a single position. So it's kind of the opposite in a bunch of different ways. Great intro, and really opened up that concept of droning the higher strings for me. We'll stay in, also he's in A minor here, and while he's droning, kind of droning this A note that he's holding here, the open A string is right here. It's right there. Could use that instead, but used this, so like really kind of the exact opposite. We can stay in A minor and just kind of map out those things and do something like that with a technique like this. So another thing I noticed was happening in the early 90s when I was learning and kind of falling in love with alternative rock was the way that bending was changing. And one of the specific ways that I was learning was bending chords. Now, I specifically learned this from Siva, probably my favorite track on Smashing Pumpkins' first album, Gish. This is how I learned it. That bend on that chord. Now, if you know Siva, you know that's not how they actually play it. They play it like this. My ear wasn't as developed at the time. All I could play was fifth chords. So that's how I learned it. I kind of taught myself the riff wrong, and I learned a technique from it. And then that technique kept showing up. So like in Nirvana's Breed. We're not even like bending to a note on that chord. We're bending to kind of create tension. And of course, on Soundgarden's Fell on Black Days. I also want to note this was probably the first time I ever played that chord phrasing, and what a great riff and song. So yeah, bending chords became kind of part of my vocabulary as a result of this point in time. So I tend to use it in my less heavy playing, actually, as a way to emphasize a chord or kind of lead into the next one. So if I've got something like an A minor, 7, D7, and C major chord progression, I might do something like something like that, where I use the bends to kind of accentuate the chords, or the areas where there are half steps that might do something similar to what Soundgarden was doing in Fell on Black Days. So those are 4 techniques that I don't hear discussed very often that I learned from 80s and 90s guitarists. I hope you found this useful and helpful with your playing. So make sure you like and subscribe for more, and there is a link in the description to my free Patreon. It's completely free, where you get early access to videos like this, exclusive content, and access to the Guitar Chord Survival Kit. Keep jamming out there and have some fun while you're playing. Cheers.